In this video, we're going to look at solving one-step equations using multiplication and division. Much like what we did in solving one-step equations with addition and subtraction, when we solve a multiplication equation, we're going to use the inverse operation, and in this case it's going to be division, to isolate the variable. So we're still isolating the variable, and we're going to use the inverse operation for multiplication, which is division. We're going to do the same operation on both sides of the equation so that it stays balanced, and then once we find our answer, we can check it. Okay, let's look at an example of a multiplication equation. In this example, I have 24 is equal to 4z. And 4z means and implies that you're multiplying 4 and the variable z together. So I rewrote my equation, and because I am multiplying 4 and z together, I'm going to undo it with division. So when I do division, I'm going to draw a bar under each side of the equation because I'm going to turn these into fractions. We use fractions in algebra. We don't use this symbol, and very seldom do we use that symbol. But especially when we're solving an equation, we never use that symbol. So I'm going to divide both sides by the coefficient that is next to the z because I want to isolate z. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So I'll divide both sides by 4. And now I have two fractions that I can simplify. I have on the left side of the equation the fraction 24/4, which would be 6. And on the other side, I have 4/4, or 4 divided by 4. 4 divided by 4 would be 1. So this would end up being z because these will cancel. So my solution is z is equal to 6. And now I can check it by plugging in that 6 where I see z in my original equation. So I'm going to rewrite my equation, and I'm going to plug in 6 where I see z. And then I do my math out. 4 times 6 is 24. My left side matches my right side, so z equals 6 is my solution. Okay, let's look at solving now a division equation. So in this one, we're going to use the inverse operation for division, which is multiplication, but we're going to use the reciprocal. And hopefully you remember what the reciprocal is. And we're going to use that to isolate the variable. We're going to do the same operation on both sides of the equation, and we're going to check it. So just a review of what the reciprocal is. If I have the fraction 3/4, the reciprocal of 3/4 is going to be, swap the numerators and denominators, it's going to be 4/3. So 4/3 is the reciprocal of 3/4. All right, let's look at this equation. We have x divided by 7 is equal to 2. I have division, and I undo division with multiplication. So multiplication in algebra, when we're solving equations, means I'm going to put a dot to show multiplication on both sides. I'm not going to use an x. I'm not going to put it underneath the 7. I'm going to put it to the side of it. Now, we had said when we divide, we're going to take the reciprocal. So I need to know what's the reciprocal of this coefficient. Well, the coefficient is not x. We actually have a coefficient there, and it's the number 1. So if I think of my coefficient in its entirety, it's 1/7. And the reciprocal of 1/7 is 7/1. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 7/1. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 7/1. Now I'm going to put a 1 under the 2 so that I'm looking at this as fractions. So if I do my math out, I have 7/1 times 1/7, and these are going to, and let's change the color of it, these are going to cancel out. So this is going to leave me with an x on this side. And on the other side, I have 2 times 7, and 2 times 7 is 14. Now 1 times 1 is 1, and I could put 14 over 1, but we're going to leave it as just 14. Now we can check, because now we have our solution, x is equal to 14. I'm going to plug in 14 where I see x. So I've got 14 divided by 7 equal 2, and when I do my math, 14 divided by 7 is 2. So 2 equals 2, and this checks. All right, one last problem, and this is probably the most difficult problem, the one that most students struggle with, and that is when you have a fraction next to a variable, and your fraction is a coefficient. How do you get rid of this? Well, you still do the reciprocal. Whatever the reciprocal of this fraction is, you multiply both sides by that reciprocal. So let's first start by finding the reciprocal of negative 2/3. Well, the reciprocal of negative 2/3 is 3 over 2, and it is negative. And that's because when we multiply the reciprocals times each other, we should end up with a positive 1. So we are going to multiply both sides times negative 3/2. So I'm going to do my dot, dot, dot on both sides, negative 3/2 on both sides. I'll put 6 over 1 so we can see the fraction multiplication. And now this is the fun part. On this side, negative 3/2 times negative 2/3, I just showed you, this is going to equal a positive 1. And students like to say, well, the 2's cancel, the 3's cancel, and a negative 1 times a negative 1 is a positive 1. Or they'll just say cancel, cancel, cancel. So if I do cancel everything out, this just leaves me with an x on this side. Now on the other side, I just have some fraction multiplication to do. And you can simplify 6 and 2 ahead of time, or you can multiply 6 times negative 3 and divide by 2, whatever you want. I will do simplifying ahead of time because I don't like to multiply big numbers together. So I know 2 goes into 2 once, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. And now when I do 3 times negative 3, I get a negative 9. Now I can check this by going back to my original equation and putting in, no, it's 6, Mrs. Dansrow. Putting in negative 9 for x. So I have negative 2/3 times 9 is equal to 6. And let's put it over 1, and I'll simplify ahead of time. And now I have, forgot the negative, negative 2 times negative 3 is a positive 6, and 6 equals 6. And that is my solution then. X is equal to negative 9.